My name is Tara Bennett. Today, people know me as a surgeon. Patients know me as the doctor who walks into operating rooms when everyone else is running out of options. Nurses know me as the woman who never leaves until every patient is checked one last time. Medical students know me as the surgeon who asks difficult questions because she expects them to become exceptional. But long before any of that, my family knew me by a different name, the quitter. It started when I was 18. The label followed me for years, and the strange thing was I never fought it. I never argued. I never defended myself. I simply let people believe whatever they wanted, because I had bigger problems to solve. The summer before my freshman year of college was supposed to be exciting. My acceptance letter sat proudly on our kitchen counter. My mother showed it to anyone who visited. My father talked about how his daughter would be the first person in the family to earn a university degree. Everything looked perfect. Then reality arrived. My father was injured at work. One accident, one moment, and suddenly everything changed. The company denied responsibility. Medical bills began piling up. His income disappeared almost overnight. My mother picked up extra shifts at a grocery store. Still, it wasn't enough. Some nights I would hear them arguing quietly after midnight. Not because they were angry with each other. Because they were scared. Scared people often sound angry. I learned that lesson young. One evening I walked into the kitchen and found my mother sitting at the table with a calculator. Bills were spread everywhere. She didn't notice me at first. She was crying silently, just staring at numbers, adding them, subtracting them, trying to create money that didn't exist. That image never left me. A week later, I made my decision. I withdrew from college before classes even started. Nobody asked me to. Nobody forced me. I simply looked at my family and knew what needed to happen. My mother cried when I told her. My father refused to speak for 2 days. Neither reaction changed my mind. I got a job, then another, then a third. Mornings at a grocery warehouse, afternoons delivering supplies, evenings cleaning office buildings downtown. For the next 4 years, that was my life. Work, sleep, repeat. Work, sleep, repeat. The dream of becoming a doctor felt very far away. Sometimes it felt impossible, but I never stopped carrying it. Every night after work, I studied. Not because anyone expected me to, because I expected it from myself. I bought used textbooks online. I watched free lectures. I took notes at 2 a.m. while the rest of the city slept. Nobody saw those hours. Success often grows in places where nobody is watching. At family gatherings, the story was different. Relatives would ask about college. Someone would answer for me. Oh, Tara dropped out. The words always came with a look. A disappointed look. A pitying look. The kind of look people give someone they believe has wasted their potential. At first it bothered me. Then it hurt. Eventually it became background noise. One Thanksgiving dinner stands out more than the others. I was 21. My cousin Ashley had just graduated. The family couldn't stop talking about her future. And they should have. She worked hard. She earned it. But somewhere during dinner, my Uncle Frank pointed toward me. You should have stayed in school like Ashley. The table went quiet. My mother looked uncomfortable. My father stared at his plate. Everyone waited for my response. I smiled. Maybe. That was all I said. Maybe. The conversation moved on. But something changed inside me that night. I realized I was spending too much energy wishing people understood. Most people only see the chapter you're currently living. They don't see the chapters you're writing in private. After that, I stopped seeking validation. I focused on progress. Tiny progress. One step at a time. At 22, I enrolled in community college classes. Only 2 courses. That was all I could afford. I worked full-time and studied at night. The schedule was brutal. Some days I slept 4 hours. Some days less. But every completed course felt like a brick added to a foundation nobody else could see. Years passed. The foundation grew. Eventually, I transferred to a university. Then something incredible happened. I earned a scholarship. The email arrived while I was sitting in my car outside work. I read it 3 times. Then I cried. Not because of the money. Because for the first time in years, it felt like proof. Proof that sacrifice had meaning. Proof that the dream was still alive. I wanted to tell my family immediately. But I didn't. Not out of bitterness. Out of caution. I had learned something important. People who constantly doubt you often need results more than promises. So I kept working. Kept studying. Kept building. Medical school came next. Getting accepted felt unreal. The first day, I stood outside the building for nearly 10 minutes before walking inside. I remembered every warehouse shift, Every late-night study session, every family gathering where someone called me a quitter, and suddenly none of it mattered. I was here, exactly where I promised myself I would be. Medical school wasn't easy. Nothing worthwhile ever is. There were nights I questioned everything. Exams that crushed my confidence. Rotations that left me emotionally exhausted. Patients whose stories followed me home. But every challenge reinforced one truth. I belonged there. Years later, during my surgical residency, I met Dr. Eleanor Hayes. She was one of the toughest surgeons in the hospital. Residents feared her. Patients adored her. One afternoon, after a particularly difficult procedure, she stopped me in a hallway. "Tara." "Yes, doctor?" "You notice details other people miss." I waited. She continued. "That's not something they can teach." Then she walked away. The conversation lasted less than 30 seconds. But I remembered every word. Sometimes a single sentence arrives exactly when you need it. The years that followed moved fast. Residency, fellowship, board certifications, more responsibility, more pressure, more lives depending on decisions made in seconds. By the time I turned 34, I had become one of the youngest cardiac trauma specialists in the region. The achievement felt surreal, not because of the title, because of the journey. The 18-year-old girl standing in that kitchen staring at unpaid bills would never have believed this future was possible. Then something happened that would change everything. One ordinary Thursday afternoon, a journalist named Rebecca Cole arrived at the hospital. She was producing a television feature highlighting professionals who had overcome unusual obstacles. Someone recommended me. I almost declined. My schedule was packed. Patients came first. They always would. But Rebecca was persistent. Eventually, I agreed to a short interview. What started as 20 minutes became almost 90. She asked about medicine, then my childhood, then the years after leaving college. For the first time, I told the full story. Not dramatically, not for sympathy. Just honestly, when the interview ended, Rebecca looked at me for a moment. Then she smiled. "I think people need to hear this." I thanked her and returned to work. Honestly? I forgot about it. Surgeries continued. Patients needed attention. Life moved forward. I had no idea that within 72 hours that interview would appear on television. And when it did, the same family that once called me a quitter would suddenly see me in a way they never had before. And one phone call was about to change a relationship that had been broken for nearly 20 years. The night the interview aired, my phone exploded with messages. But there was one message that made my heart stop. It came from my father. The same father who hadn't said he was proud of me in almost 2 decades. And what he wrote next changed everything. The message appeared on my phone at exactly 7:18 p.m. I remember the time because I stared at it for nearly a full minute before opening it. I was standing outside operating room 3, reviewing post-surgical notes while waiting for a patient to be transferred to recovery. My phone had been vibrating nonstop for almost 20 minutes. Texts, calls, voicemails, notifications from relatives I hadn't heard from in years. At first, I assumed something was wrong. Then I remembered. The interview. Rebecca's television segment was airing that evening. I hadn't planned on watching it. I was working, just like I had been working during most of the important moments in my life. While other people were gathering around televisions, I was checking patient charts. Life doesn't pause because your story appears on a screen, especially in a hospital. I glanced at the newest notification. "Dad, just one sentence. I think I owe you an apology." For a moment, the hallway around me disappeared. The voices, the machines, the movement. Everything seemed strangely quiet. My father was not a man who apologized easily. In fact, I could count the number of times he had apologized to anyone during my childhood on one hand. And now there it was, a sentence I never expected to read. I slipped the phone back into my pocket. Not because I didn't care, because a patient needed me. That was the strange thing about medicine. No matter what happened in your personal life, somebody else's emergency still came first. Hours later, my shift finally ended. The hospital parking garage was nearly empty. I sat inside my car exhausted. The city lights stretched across the windshield. My phone showed 37 missed calls, 22 text messages, 3 voicemails, and one message from my mother that simply said, "Please call us when you can." I took a deep breath. Then I pressed call. My mother answered immediately, almost as if she had been staring at the phone waiting. "Tara?" "Hi, Mom." The silence that followed felt heavier than words. Then I heard her crying. Not dramatic crying. Not theatrical crying. Real crying. The kind people do when nobody is watching. The kind that comes from regret. For several seconds, she couldn't speak. Finally, she managed to say, "We didn't know." I leaned back against the driver's seat. "What didn't you know?" "Any of it." Her voice cracked. "The jobs, the scholarships, the years you spent studying, the sacrifices. We didn't know." Part of me wanted to ask why. Why didn't you know? Why didn't you ask? Why didn't you listen? But I already knew the answer. Sometimes people become so attached to a story that they stop looking for new information. And for years, my family had been attached to the story of Tara the quitter. It was simpler, comfortable, easy to understand. The truth was much more complicated. My mother took a shaky breath. "Your father wants to talk to you." I closed my eyes. "Okay." A few seconds later, his voice came through the phone. Older than I remembered. Softer. "Tara." "Hi, Dad." Another silence. Then something happened that would have sounded impossible 10 years earlier. "I'm sorry." Just like that. No excuses, no explanations, no attempts to justify anything. Just those 2 words. I didn't know what to say. Not because I wasn't happy to hear them. Because I had imagined this moment so many times throughout my life that now it felt unreal. My father continued, "When you left school, I thought you gave up." I listened. I thought you were taking the easy path. His voice trembled slightly. And the longer I believed that, the easier it became to ignore evidence that I was wrong. The honesty surprised me. Most people protect their pride. My father was finally lowering his. The interview showed things I never bothered to ask about. He paused, then added quietly, "That's my failure, not yours." I stared through the windshield at the city lights. For years, I had imagined confronting him, telling him how much those labels had hurt, how many nights I had cried, how many family dinners I endured in silence. Yet now, in the moment itself, anger felt strangely absent. Not gone, just smaller, less important, because something more valuable was happening. The truth was finally being acknowledged. We talked for nearly an hour. About everything. The years after I left home. Medical school. Residency. The surgeries. The patients. The sacrifices. For the first time in a very long time, we weren't speaking as adversaries. We were simply father and daughter, trying to rebuild something that should never have been broken. When the call ended, I sat in the parking garage long after the engine started. I felt lighter, not healed. Healing takes time, but lighter. The next morning, the hospital felt different. Not because anything had changed there, because something had changed inside me. I walked into my office and found flowers on my desk. Then another bouquet. Then another. Cards. Emails. Messages. The television segment had spread much further than anyone expected. Former classmates reached out. Old professors contacted me. Nurses I barely knew stopped me in hallways to say they appreciated my story. It was overwhelming, but one message stood apart from all the others. A message sent at 11:42 p.m. the previous night. The sender was someone I had never met. Her name was Lily Martinez. She was 17 years old. The subject line read, "I think my life is over." My stomach tightened. I opened it immediately. The email was short, simple, honest. Lily explained that her father had been injured in a construction accident 6 months earlier. Her family was struggling financially. She had left school to help support them. Everyone around her believed she would never return. Some relatives openly called her a failure. Others said she had thrown away her future. Then she watched the interview. For the first time in months, she felt hopeful. The final sentence stopped me cold. "How did you keep believing when nobody else did?" I read that line 4 times, because I knew exactly what she meant. The question wasn't really about education, or careers, or success. It was about survival. How do you continue moving toward a future nobody else can see? I should have gone home. I should have slept. Instead, I spent nearly an hour writing back. I told her the truth. Not the television version, the real version. The lonely version, the difficult version. I told her there were nights I doubted myself, years where progress felt invisible, moments where quitting seemed reasonable. But I also told her something I had learned. A delay is not a defeat. Life doesn't always move in straight lines. Sometimes the path takes longer. That doesn't mean the destination disappears. Before sending the email, I added one final sentence. If you're willing to work for your future, don't let anyone else decide what it looks like. Then I hit send. I assumed that would be the end of it. A helpful message, nothing more. I couldn't have been more wrong. Because 8 weeks later, Lily Martinez would walk through the front doors of Meridian Medical Center carrying a notebook in her hands. and the conversation we were about to have would remind me why every difficult year of my life had mattered. When Lily finally sat across from me, she asked one question that instantly brought tears to my eyes. It was the exact same question I had written in my own notebook 17 years earlier. 8 weeks after our first email exchange, Lily Martinez walked into Meridian Medical Center carrying a worn notebook pressed tightly against her chest. I recognized her immediately, not because I had seen her before, because she looked exactly like someone I used to know. Me. The same nervous energy, the same cautious hope, the same fear of wanting something that seemed impossibly far away. A volunteer escorted her to my office. When she stepped inside, she smiled politely and sat across from me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she opened her notebook. Every page was filled with notes. Questions, plans, goals, ideas. The sight made me laugh softly. What? She asked. You came prepared. She smiled. You said if I wanted a future, I should treat it like a project. I nodded. Good answer. For the next hour, we talked about school, scholarships, volunteer programs, financial aid, and long-term goals. She listened carefully. Not like someone looking for motivation, like someone looking for instructions. That distinction matters. Motivation fades. Systems remain. Before she left, she asked me a question. A question that hit me harder than I expected. Did you ever stop feeling behind everyone else? The room became quiet. Because 17 years earlier, I had written the exact same question inside my own notebook. I remembered staring at classmates who seemed so far ahead. I remembered wondering if I had already ruined my future. I remembered comparing my chapter 3 to someone else's chapter 10. And I remembered how exhausting that was. Finally, I answered honestly, no. Her face fell slightly. Then I continued. Not completely. She looked confused. The difference is that eventually I stopped caring. Now she looked interested. I leaned forward. The moment you stop comparing timelines, you start building your own. She wrote that down immediately. I still remember watching her pen move across the page. Sometimes wisdom arrives through experience. Sometimes it arrives through pain. And sometimes it arrives because someone else walked the road before you. When Lily left my office, I felt hopeful. But I also knew something important. Advice only matters if people act on it. The next move belonged to her. Months passed. Life continued. Surgeries. Patients. Research projects. Conferences. The usual chaos of hospital life. Then one morning, an envelope appeared on my desk. No return address. Just my name written neatly on the front. I opened it. Inside was a letter. It was from Lily. As I read the first paragraph, I smiled. By the second paragraph, I felt emotional. By the final paragraph, I had tears in my eyes. She had returned to school, earned excellent grades, joined a pre-medical mentorship program, started volunteering at a community clinic. Most importantly, she had stopped believing her story was over. At the bottom of the page, she wrote, "Everyone told me leaving school meant my future ended. Thank you for showing me it was only a pause." I read those words 3 times. Then I folded the letter carefully and placed it inside my desk drawer. That drawer would become important later. Because medicine is not a profession filled only with victories. People imagine surgeons collecting success stories. Reality is more complicated. Sometimes patients recover. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes you do everything correctly and still lose. Those are the days nobody talks about. The days that stay with you. The days that follow you home. On one particularly difficult evening, after a surgery that ended in heartbreak despite every effort from our team, I sat alone in my office long after everyone else had gone home. The hospital was quiet. The lights were dim. The weight of responsibility felt heavy. That's when I opened the drawer. And there it was. Lily's letter. I read it again. Then again. Slowly, the perspective returned. Not every life can be saved in an operating room. But impact takes many forms. Sometimes you save a patient. Sometimes you help create a future. Both matter. Around that same time, my relationship with my family continued to improve. Not instantly. Not perfectly. Trust rebuilds slower than it breaks. But progress was happening. My father called more often. My mother stopped apologizing and started listening. Family gatherings felt different. Lighter. Healthier. One Sunday afternoon, we gathered for my grandmother's birthday. The entire family was there. Cousins, aunts, uncles, children running through the house. The same relatives who once introduced me as the family quitter. At one point, I overheard someone asking my cousin Ashley about my career. Before I could hear the question, Ashley answered, "Tara, she's one of the strongest people I know." I froze. Not because of the compliment, because years earlier, Ashley had been sitting at the same dinner table where people questioned my decisions. Now the story had changed. Not because I forced it to, because truth eventually caught up. That evening, as everyone prepared to leave, my father stopped me near the front door. He looked uncomfortable, which usually meant he was about to say something important. "Tara?" "Yeah?" He cleared his throat, then smiled. A real smile. The kind fathers give when they are finally honest with themselves. "I'm proud of you." Simple words. Ordinary words. But after everything we had been through, they carried extraordinary weight. For years I imagined hearing them. For years I thought those words would fix everything. They didn't. And strangely enough, they didn't need to. Because by then I had already built a life without them. That was the lesson. Validation is wonderful, but it is not a requirement. The most important belief came from the person staring back at me in the mirror every morning. The 18-year-old girl who left college to help her family. The young woman working 3 jobs. The student studying after midnight. The resident surviving impossible shifts. The surgeon standing under operating room lights. She kept going, even when nobody understood. Even when people doubted her. Even when the finish line wasn't visible. And because she kept going, other people found permission to do the same. Today, Lily is still pursuing her dream. My parents are part of my life. My career continues to grow. But the achievement I'm most proud of isn't a title. It isn't an award. It isn't a television interview. It's knowing that the hardest years of my life weren't wasted. They became a bridge that helped someone else cross their own difficult chapter. My name is Dr. Tara Bennett. Some people once called me a quitter. Others called me a failure. Neither turned out to be true. Because a setback is not a destiny. A delay is not a defeat. And the people who underestimate you today may someday tell your story as proof of what determination can accomplish. The world will always have opinions about who you are. The question is simple. Will you spend your life defending yourself? Or will you spend it becoming the person they never imagined you could be? Because sometimes the greatest response to doubt is not an argument. It's a life so extraordinary that no explanation is necessary,